Hi, I'm Ben Ferguson, and welcome to your AMAC Weekly News. First up, the left is now using the COVID-19 vaccine as a way to attack conservatives. They're even going so far as to claim that you're not a Christian and you don't follow Jesus if you even question the vaccine passports they're now proposing or the mask mandates. More on that in just a second. Up next, the Biden administration's creation and the handling of this massive border crisis, well, it's been a total failure. But was this actually done on purpose? Well, there's new information that we have received that shows that Democrats may have actually been okay with this crisis at the border. I'll explain that in just a moment. And finally, AMAC Action President Bob Carlstrom is here to discuss the battle to save the filibuster. Yes, the filibuster is extremely important, and we'll explain why so many Democrats are showing total hypocrisy on this issue. Quick reminder, though, if you haven't shared this with your family and friends, make sure you share this video right now on social media. Your AMAC Weekly News starts right now. As COVID-19 numbers drop across the country, the left continues to spread fear in an attempt to maintain control over every single thing you as an American do every single day. Their latest attempt to do this is through the consideration of COVID-19 passports. Now, what this would mean is that if you get the COVID-19 vaccine, you would then get a government-issued passport, most likely a mobile passport that would be on your phone. Now, this passport would allow for you to then have the right to travel, attend events, take part, in other words, in daily life. Now, in order to do this, the government would also have to create a national database that catalogs all of the people who get the vaccine. This would mean big corporations would have access to your medical information. But more than that, it would mean that you could not participate in normal life if you do not commit to allowing people to put a vaccination in your body that you may or may not want. Now remember, the left believes forcing you to have an ID to vote is, well, in their words, racist. But according to them, a vaccine passport must be implemented or you're actively trying to kill people. Yes, they are this dramatic and this ridiculous. Let me give you an example of how the left is demonizing conservatives using an actual report from CNN attacking you if you ask even a single question about vaccines or mask mandates or any of this. Take a look.
But it also goes to the radicalization of the Republican Party. This is a Republican Party that fundamentally does not believe in government, skeptical of government action, skeptical of science because science has taken the political debate to places requiring government action that they don't want to go. Climate change is an example of that. But so was the pandemic. And so it was not just the president. The people who were around the president believed in, had the same impulses as the president to be skeptical of government telling people to wear masks, to be skeptical of taking steps to safeguard public health. That's simply the nature of the modern Republican Party, and it's why there's such a stark contrast with this new administration.
Now, what you just heard was CNN anchors and correspondents blaming the Republican Party and President Trump for the loss of almost 500,000 American lives. To make things worse, the left has taken to attacking the faith now of conservatives who don't want to get the vaccine or don't believe in a vaccine as a passport should be required for you to live a basic life of freedom. If you don't believe me, just take a listen to this from Joe Scarborough on MSNBC as they decide to get on the action of attacking and assaulting conservatives and our freedoms.
Well, Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the... When did that stop mattering to you? When did the truth stop mattering to you so much that you were willing to put other people's lives at risk? Greater love hath no man than to lay down his life for his brother. You're doing the opposite. You're going out of your way to kill people.
For many of you that just watched that clip, you may be saying to yourself, man, this is starting to sound a little bit too much like World War II, like Nazi Germany. This is also a violation of your medical privacy. And let's not forget, the vaccine we have right now and Operation Warp Speed was actually brought to you by conservatives and Donald Trump. Remember the left when they said they would refuse to get a vaccine that was put together so quickly under Donald Trump's leadership? Well, if we're so anti-vaccination and we're so anti-science and we're trying to kill people, then why is it that we're the ones that actually push forward with an operation called Warp Speed? Think about that for a second. This also comes down to the basic issue of freedom. We should have the right and the freedom to not be forced into getting a vaccine, putting something in our bodies by the government, and being told that they're going to take away our rights unless we do it. I shouldn't have to show my medical records to go to a sporting event, into a movie theater, into a restaurant to eat dinner. That's exactly what the left, however, is demanding right now with a passport. You can't get in unless you show your passport. Think about what this will do to American businesses and small businesses. Think about how many people may not get their passports, and it will destroy their businesses because those people aren't allowed in because of a government mandate. The same type of freedoms they've taken away from us, they're now willing to give back to us only if we agree to a vaccination. At the end of the day, it is your issue. It is your decision. It's your body. You should get to decide what you want to do. Whether you get the vaccine or not should be up to the American people. It should not be mandated by the government to the point where they say you cannot even function in society or even go shopping or eat out without doing what they tell you to do. Now, we here at AMAC are committed to protecting your freedoms, especially on your medical history, your medical records, and to make sure that government doesn't have this much power over all of us with one simple rule that they come up with out of nowhere. There is a crisis in this country at the border, but there's something about this crisis that you need to understand. It may have been a crisis that was purposely created. That's right, the Biden administration created a border crisis and is only making it worse right now because they're refusing to stop the crisis at the border. You have a record-breaking number of illegals, especially children, crossing into our country with no end in sight, and an administration that is not telling people to not come to America. To make things worse, they have decided to put illegal children ahead of American children when it even comes to education. You heard me correctly. The latest reports show that teachers in the state of California who refuse to return to the classroom to teach our own students in this country are now volunteering to teach illegal immigrant children in person. Children have not been to school in more than a year in California for in-person learning. Now, when asked about this, here is the so-called explanation given by the White House press secretary. Take a look.
As I understand it, San Diego public schools are opening in early April.
Psaki claimed U.S. schools are on spring break, which she believes justified redistricting teachers to teach illegal migrants. And she also touted hybrid learning for U.S. children while defending in-person classes for migrant minors.
And these kids are going back to school for hybrid learning. We, of course, want that to be 5 days a week, and we're confident we'll get there early next month. And I believe they're also on spring break right now. So these teachers would be, I'm not sure if it's volunteer or paid. You'd have to ask the local school district while the kids are on spring break.
So the White House excuse is that the American students are on spring break. Therefore, it's okay for illegals to be taught in person first. While all of this is happening, and by the way, it's also a lie because the students have not been in the classroom in more than a year. The Biden administration's head of the border crisis, Kamala Harris, is nowhere to be seen. In fact, she's been caught laughing when she's been asked about visiting the border. Take a look.
Do you have plans to visit the border?
Not today. But I have before, and I'm sure I will again.
Meanwhile, the reality on the ground is the border agents are clearly overwhelmed and seem to be purposely understaffed. We're in the middle of a pandemic right now, and all you have to do to see how bad things are from a health standpoint is look at the detention center in Donna, Texas. All you have to do is look and see the horrendous conditions, both from a humanitarian standpoint and from a health perspective. There's literally barely even 3 inches between people being held there. Now, the Donna facility has a capacity of 1,000 people, but during the COVID pandemic, the capacity was lowered to 250. Right now, there are currently at least 4,100 migrants in that facility, 3,400 of whom are unaccompanied minors. 39 of the unaccompanied minors have been at the facility for more than 15 days. Although the Biden administration finally allowed the press into the facility on Tuesday, it only came after a group of GOP senators visited and released the shocking photos and the videos of the condition at the facility. One such video came from Ted Cruz and involved a confrontation with a Biden staffer when she refused to allow him to video the facility. Take a look.
Respect. Please give dignity to the people. Please give dignity to the people.
So you work for the commissioner, your senior advisor. You were hired 2 weeks ago, and you're instructed to ask us to not have any pictures taken here.
Please respect the people,
because the political
rules.
leadership at DHS does not want the American people to know it.
Please respect the rules,
You keep
sir.
standing in front of the pictures, so
Please
you don't want the
respect the
pictures
rules.
taken. The rules are arbitrary, and
Please
they're
respect
designed
the
to
rules
keep
and
the
give
American
the
people
people
in the
dignity
dark.
and respect. That's all we ask.
Well,
Dignity
no, it's
and
not.
respect.
You're asking, is this
Please-
dignity and respect? Look at
Please
these people.
give
There's
dignity
a
and
pandemic.
respect to the people.
Let me
I
ask you, there's a
I
pandemic.
respectfully ask you, sir.
There is a pandemic.
With
Is this
full-hearted,
respecting the rights of these
full-heartedly,
kids?
I ask you. Please
Are you
respect
respecting the
people.
rights of these
This
kids?
is not a zoo, sir. Please don't treat the people.
You're right, and this is a
as such.
dangerous place.
Please don't treat the
And
people
your
like
policies,
this. That's all I ask for
unfortunately,
you,
are
sir.
trying to hide them. I understand
That's
you
all
were
I ask
instructed
you.
when 18
I
senators
ask you
came
to
down
please
here.
respect the people, give them dignity
I
and
respect them, and I
respect.
want to fix this situation.
We all wanna
and
fix
the
this, sir. We
administration
don't
you're
want
working
this to
for is
happen anymore.
responsible for these conditions.
Please respect the people with dignity and
Okay.
respect,
And
sir.
I ask you to respect the people as well. This
I am
is not
respecting you.
respect.
I am respecting the
This
people.
is not respect.
Ted Cruz is obviously absolutely right. In fact, it's probably time for him to call out the Vice President Kamala Harris, who's in charge of the response of the administration, to come hang out with him at the border for a few days. My guess is she'll decline the invitation. The American people also deserve to see what their tax dollars are funding. Yet the Biden administration decided, well, you're not worthy of seeing that. At the same time, the person who is supposed to be leading the team to stop the crisis, Kamala Harris, is also laughing about it. Think about how bad that is from a PR standpoint, but the media isn't seeming to want to touch that issue either. This is what we will continue to experience under a Biden administration because it seems that this crisis is okay for them. Even this morning, you had the Biden administration celebrating the fact that more than 500 beds were going to be added at a military base to house more people coming across the border. The question every American should be asking themselves right now is this: is this crisis actually being done on purpose? Is this administration actually welcoming more people into this country on purpose? Are they even trying to secure the border or stop the massive flow of migrants into this country? And if they're not, which I would argue they're clearly not trying to stop, then why are they doing it? It probably is because they're just hoping to bring in new people in this country they can give amnesty to. That, my friends, is something we're going to fight very hard at AMAC every day to make sure it doesn't happen. So we have two major stories this week that I want to dive into. One of them deals with a filibuster and what you need to understand about what's happening in D.C., and also H.R. 1 and where it is right now and how we are working to stop it. Joining me now to talk about this, the president of AMAC Action, Bob Carlstrom, is with us. Bob, I appreciate you coming on. And we are watching as liberals are attacking the filibuster in an attempt to completely get rid of it. There's an interesting quote, and I want to use the Washington Post, a liberal newspaper, where they wrote this about Democrats basically being full of it on this issue of the filibuster. Their own words, quote, in 2017, when Donald Trump was president and Democrats were in the minority, 61 senators, including 30 Democrats, signed a letter promising to preserve the right of the Senate minority to delay or block legislation. But now that Republicans are in the minority, just 2 Democrats, Senator Joe Manchin and another Democrat from Arizona, are willing to make that same pledge. Now, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer not only refused, he warned he will not allow the GOP minority to dictate, quote unquote, to the Senate what we should do and how we should proceed. Now, to remind people of the hypocrisy, when Schumer was the minority leader, the article goes on to say, he vigorously used the filibuster to do just that, Under his leadership, Democrats used the filibuster to block funding for construction of Trump's border wall in 2019. Many may remember that. They used it not once, but twice to impede passage of the CARES Act, forcing Republicans to agree to changes, including a $600 weekly federal unemployment supplement. And Democrats used it in September and October of last year to stop Republicans from passing further coronavirus relief before the November elections. They used it to halt Senator Tim Scott's police reform legislation so Republicans could not claim credit for forging a bipartisan response to the concerns of racial justice protesters. All of this was done through filibusters, and now they're saying we want to get rid of it. Your reaction to that?
Well, first, I'm glad the Washington Post got one thing right on this.
Yeah, no joke.
But we're absolutely seeing hypocrisy, of the highest order once again. And it's not only Schumer who's defended it in the past, even former President Obama have defended it in the past, and they're just walking away. And it becomes a matter of convenience for them so they can shove through this very leftist progressive legislative strategy that they have. And shame on them, because the filibuster is a time-honored tradition under Rule 22 in the Senate, and it does preserve what is, in fact, one of the unique dimensions of the Senate, is the opportunity for extended debate, for the right of the minority to raise the issues before the full Senate then decides enough debate is enough. So this is a shame. It's a sham. And it's the wrong thing for them to do.
Well, there's been continuity between parties on this issue for centuries, decades, obviously, where both sides used to use it to stop extreme movements in government, right? Extreme swings to the left and to the right. And then it started being used as more of a way to just say, we don't want to deal with this issue, even if you do win an election. We clearly saw that right before Donald Trump was up for re-election when they said, no, we'll use the filibuster to stop funding going out, COVID relief funds. 2.0. We're going to stop you so that you can't do police reform, for example, and claim credit for that before the election. So we'll use the filibuster. And the filibuster has been used in more political ways. But the reality now is they're saying, since we won the last election, we're going to blow up tradition, we're going to blow up history, and we're going to slam down your throats all the radical leftist socialist agenda that we can as quickly as possible.
Well, you're absolutely right, Ben. They're playing a very nasty and awful partisan game here. In one circumstance, they do one thing, and now that the circumstances change, they're doing the opposite of it. And the hypocrisy is just really appalling. And, history will ultimately be the judge of that, particularly when we go into the 2022 election. But the stuff that they're trying to ram through is outrageous. It is intended to reduce and change the nation, our nation itself, and the republic. They're really trying to also vitiate the Constitution and the Constitution's emphasis, in terms of the rights of the states and the rights of the American people.
Which brings us to this other major point, and that's about H.R. 1. Bob, this is so important that people watching understand how toxic H.R. 1 is to not only our Constitution, but democracy and the way of life, the way that we vote. What are we doing right now to stop this from moving forward?
There are a number of conservative groups, along with AMAC Action, which are really fighting it at the state level. We're fighting it in the media. Our members are sending letters to the editor of the opinion leader newspapers in West Virginia, in Montana, and in Arizona and other states. This is an insidious piece of legislation. It's one that is intended solely to establish one-party rule of this country. It is also one that enables voter fraud, indeed even voter trafficking. They call it vote harvesting, but it's voter trafficking. It would remove the requirement that states have to show a voter ID, et cetera, et cetera. It is totally intended to in fact, totally erase any type of control over voting. In fact, we are starting to call it voters without borders legislation, because that is what it is attempting to foster, particularly when you link it to the absence of any genuine efforts to control the border and the illegal migration that's occurring there. So it's all
it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing to me, Bob, that we now live in a country where the left and Democrats are demanding that you show proof to travel, to eat out, to do commerce, that you have had your COVID-19 vaccine, and they want to mandate it as a passport. But at the very same time, they are saying we do not need to show ID, and it's somehow racist if you demand someone show ID to vote in our elections. But you must have a card, a passport given to you by the United States government to even operate in basic society, go to a sporting event, go to your grocery store, or eat out. This is how crazy the left has become in this country. Bob, I appreciate you coming on and talking about this. And obviously, this battle and fight is not over. Thanks again, and I appreciate you coming on AMAC Weekly News.
Glad to be here. Again, the voting right is a sacred right in which millions of Americans have died to preserve that right. It's disgraceful what they're doing.
Well said. Thank you, Bob. That's it for this edition of your AMAC Weekly News. A quick reminder, if you have not joined AMAC or renewed your AMAC membership, or you haven't told your family and your friends about AMAC and the incredible work that we're doing, especially with AMAC Action, now is a time to tell them about exactly what's going on. We are fighting for our freedoms in this country, and they are under attack. So we need you to join and get involved with AMAC. You can easily join AMAC by going to amac.us, and you can actually join there. Tell your family and friends. You also get this program, you get our AMAC magazine, you get our email updates as well, and we are fighting hard to make sure that our freedoms are preserved in this country. I'm Ben Ferguson, and I'll see you back next week for our next episode.